One of the most important things you can do to grow as a person is to reflect on your past, not linger on it. The ocean to me has always symbolized home. Whether I was in Korea or the US, I was always near the ocean. I was never really a fan of swimming in the ocean, but watching the waves come crash through the stones, it felt kind of amazing how hard they could hit, and the stones wouldn't disintegrate until years and years later. No matter what I was going through, the ocean was always there, and it was a place I could go to just sit and watch, kind of blink out and think. When I was 6, my father divorced my mother. He decided to bring me to the US where his mother and his sister was. It seemed like a good place to start over and give a new chance at life. There was a bit of difficulty in me fitting in. Well, firstly, there was a language barrier. I didn't know any English, but I think when you're that young, it's fine. I remember playing Duck Duck Goose with the kids in recess, and I eventually knew how to play. There was a horde of new culture for me to get used to, and at that age, I just accepted it. Maybe a few years later, when I started getting to know English, I was faced with more racism. At one of my elementary schools, being in an area with almost no Asians, there were kids that squinted their eyes and called me China. China was my name, even though my real name was Soyeong. The kids probably didn't know what they were actually doing, but that didn't stop me from feeling isolated. Getting into 3rd grade, I didn't need ESL anymore. The teacher told me I was fluent enough, and I became one of the best kids in English. But at that point, it wasn't a language barrier. It was cultural. I wasn't watching the same TV shows everyone else was watching. My family was still very Korean, and so was I. I started lying that I did watch the shows and trying to chime in as if I did. Maybe they noticed, maybe they didn't. But I knew it wasn't going to work. In the long run, I did become more Americanized. I started watching the TV shows that they were watching, and I was actually starting to fit in. In middle school, it was a whole different way of trying to fit in. I was pretty American by middle school, but it was just an issue of being a teenager and trying to fit in as just a group of regular friends. I had difficulty because I was shy and I didn't really know what to talk about. Each year, I was with a different group of friends. Early high school, I was in a whole new environment. I made some new friends, and I kept some old friends. I felt like I was doing pretty great, but I found out that I wasn't legal here. It was no longer a cultural or a language barrier or just a teenager thing. It was a whole legal issue. I was legally not supposed to be here, and I felt like a ghost. I felt like I was fading away. All these years trying to fit in had just crumbled because of some papers that I did not have. I didn't want this to stop me from dreaming, but it wasn't as easy as I would think. I felt like I had to give up myself. I felt like I had to force myself to fit in more than I was. It felt like a storm of my life. There were many sleepless nights and overthinking. My mind became polluted. It was as if an oil spill had occurred in my brain. Thinking was all I could do. I started isolating myself from my friends, and I stopped social media. They were doing things that I couldn't do just because I lacked a social security number. I couldn't open a bank account, or I wouldn't be able to sign up for a job. I started cracking, and I felt weak. I felt like there was nothing I could do. It seemed that the ocean that once made me feel safe wanted to swallow me whole. The waves kept crashing and crashing on me, and I felt like I was crumbling away. What should have taken years and years felt like it was all happening at once. Everyone gets worn down by things that happen to them. Sometimes it seems like even the safest place that you loved felt dangerous. The waves were hitting high, and I could no longer breathe. It was suffocating. The silence, the isolation. I wanted to get out of the ocean. I wanted to watch the ocean again, not be part of it. I think it's important to know that while thinking is a great thing to do, it can be very toxic. The water isn't always clear. Sometimes it's dirty and murky. Reflection isn't always possible. This sounds corny, but sometimes you're just not mature enough to really understand what you're in. You need to grow more, maybe. Or maybe you're still in the whole chapter. You can't reflect on a chapter until you finish reading it, right? The reflection didn't come as a whole big epiphany. It came slowly. There were small things that I started noticing that I could change and make better, I guess. Little things I could do to accept myself and my life. I didn't need to fake myself. I was tired of the face I had to put on every day. I had crumpled my real self in a bin and shoved it in the closet, and it was starting to collect dust. Even though I did want to fit in, I was even more tired of having a fake personality. No one likes a fake person, and that's exactly what I was being. Hopefully my friends would stay with me even if I started changing, or stop changing myself. Small little things like drinking black coffee, maybe it would make me seem stronger. My coffee became sweeter and I no longer needed to put myself in a muscle suit. My friends accepted me. It was one of the most fortunate things I think happened. They accepted me for who I was even though they didn't notice the changes. They told me I became softer. I was okay with being vulnerable sometimes. Sometimes you can't do anything about your situation, and that's something you just have to accept. You can't have control over everything in your life. Life is unpredictable. I started to reveal myself more. I was no longer afraid, and I no longer had to hide myself. The period of time where all I could do was think and my mind became polluted. I appreciate it. Even though it was one of my most difficult times, it brought me here now. Now I know how to accept anything that happens. And it's okay that you're different. That's what makes you you. And maybe this train of thought doesn't occur to everyone. But you being here is already a sign that you do belong here. You're here for a reason, and although things may feel very murky, things will clear out. After any storm, things are bound to return back to normal. The waters will calm down and you'll be able to swim out. And although it may seem so difficult, you'll find somewhere to sit and think about what just happened and reflect again and maybe open a new chapter. I was ready to close this chapter and move on.